In Magic the Gathering, the Power 9 are a collection of cards from the Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited sets, which are considered to be the most powerful cards ever. I've often wondered what the Power 9 of Pokemon would be, so today I'm going to create a list of the Power 9 for the Pokemon trading card game. Magic's eternal format known as Vintage restricts the Power 9 cards to one copy of each per deck. These cards from Magic's first 3 sets are considered broken and auto-inclusions into any deck that can fit them based on their color. Black Lotus is appropriate in every single deck since it is not locked to a specific mana color. These cards are some of the most expensive cards of all time in Magic the Gathering's history due to their high playability in Vintage format, and now also due to being highly sought after collector's items. Pokemon TCG's secondary market does not scale price with playability, since there is no sizable population which uses older cards for competitive play, so the Pokemon Power 9 will not relate to the Magic Power 9's monetary value whatsoever. My goal when creating this list was to highlight the most broken, generalizably strong cards from the early days of the Pokemon trading card game. I've decided to restrict the card pool to base set through Neo Genesis, since this was the largest card pool the Pokemon TCG would ever have before implementing a rotated or modified format for competitive play. I wanted to build my Power 9 list for base set through Neo Genesis Pokemon TCG out of cards which I believe will never receive exact reprints due to their absurdly strong effects, cementing them as classic broken cards. Much like the MTG Power 9, in which there are 0 creature cards, in the early days of the Pokemon trading card game, most of the broken cards were trainers, not Pokemon. Although there will be Pokemon on today's Power 9 list. Something to understand about trainer cards in the early days of the Pokemon TCG is there was only one category, trainer. That's it. So you could play all 4 copies of a card like Bill, back to back to back to back in one turn. But in today's game, stronger trainer cards are given the tag of supporter, and each player is restricted to only one supporter card per turn. As this supporter rule didn't exist at the time, please keep that in mind as we evaluate the cards. So we have the card pool, base through Neo Genesis, but that is still a lot of cards to pick and choose from. I predict that a popular suggestion from the comments will be Cleffa, so I want to talk about why this won't be one of my Power 9. Cleffa was an incredibly good card, which 3-time world champion Jason Klaczynski quoted as saving the game, since it circumvented aggression with its baby rule and prevented hand disruption with its Eek attack. I think every format should have good starting Pokemon that prevent quick wins and hand disruption, so I'd be remiss to put this card on a list of cards that should be banished to the Shadow Realm. But please let me know what you think about this decision to omit Cleffa from the list in the comments down below. Before we enter my Power 9 for the Pokemon TCG, I have one more caveat. Slowking. Slowking from Neo Genesis has the Mind Games Pokemon power, which reads whenever your opponent plays a trainer card, you may flip a coin. If heads, that card does nothing. Put it on top of your opponent's deck. This Pokemon power was intended to have the very important clause, if Slowking is your active Pokemon, but the card was mistranslated and or misprinted in English, and it was never corrected. This card was legal for play up until 2002, when the modified format was created and Slowking was banned from it, but it had plenty of time to wreak havoc in standard format until then. The issue with selecting this card for the Power 9 is that it would be completely based off of the mistranslation and Wizard of the Coast's refusal to errata or ban the card. In Japan, Slowking was not very strong at all, since it was printed as intended. In summation, Slowking will not be included in my Power 9 today, since the card is extremely underwhelming with its intended effect. If you're interested in more info on Slowking, I have a whole video on it, and I'll leave that link in the description. If you've made it this far, I really hope you're enjoying the video. I have a lot of great content ranging from history of the Pokemon trading card game to competitive standard format coverage, so please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of it. I also want to thank my sponsors Beast Coast Pokemon, PoTownStore.com, PokemonCard.io, and Dragon Shield Sleeves for helping me make my dreams for this channel a reality. Now let's finally discuss my Power 9 list. Sneasel was printed in the Neo Genesis set alongside the previously mentioned Cleffa and Slowking cards, but unlike Slowking, it was printed as intended, and unlike Cleffa, it was a menace to the competitive card game environment. Sneasel was so dominant and indicative of the Pokemon trading card game in the early 2000s that life-size Sneasel cards were displayed at major events to take pictures with. Sneasel had the Beat Up attack, which cost 2 Dark Energy to use, and do note that there were no basic Dark Energies in the game at the time, so you would be using Rainbow Energy or Special Darkness Energies to satisfy this cost. If you were using Special Darkness Energies, the attack would do plus 10 damage for each Darkness Energy attached. Beat Up reads, flip a coin for each of your Pokemon in play, including this one. This attack does 20 damage times the number of heads. Assuming the player had a full bench, which was not hard to do, this attack would average 60 damage for just 2 energy, 80 damage if you include the Special Darkness Energies. 60 to 80 damage on average for 2 energy with 0 negative effects like discarding energy or doing self-damage was unheard of at this time. Not only was Sneasel stronger than most basic Pokemon, but it was also stronger than most Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon as well. Sneasel was never banned in the standard format, but when the first rotation occurred for the new modified format of Team Rocket On, Sneasel finally received its well-deserved ban. Professor Oak is a simple card. Discard your hand and then draw 7 cards. Even today we have cards with this effect. The Professor's Research cards, which feature a myriad of different professors from the Pokemon franchise. The defining factor that lands Professor Oak on the Power 9 is that it had no restrictions such as the modern-day supporter rule. You could play Professor Oak to discard your hand and draw 7, and then play another Professor Oak to discard your hand and draw 7, and then play another Professor Oak to discard your hand and draw 7, and then, well, you get the idea. The card was absurdly powerful and was in great need of a once per turn rule like we have today. Gust of Wind is a card much like Professor Oak, since its legacy lives on with cards like Boss's Orders and Pokemon Catcher, which are colloquially referred to as Gust effects in homage to the original Gust of Wind. Using this card in succession with all of the broken trainer cards available at the time felt completely unfair because, well, it was. Today's version of the cards have some sort of downside which balance the card, such as Boss's Orders, which counts as your supporter for turn, and Pokemon Catcher, which requires a successful coin flip to grant the Gust effect. Next is Computer Search. We could already draw through most of our deck with Professor Oak, so why not just go in there and get exactly what you need? Discarding 2 cards from your hand that you don't need to get a specific card from your deck is an incredible effect. And remember, you could use multiple Computer Searches a turn if you wanted. This card was later reprinted as an Ace-Spec card, which is a type of trainer card in the expanded format, of which you can play a maximum of 1 per deck. Item Finder was an overpowered card similar to Computer Search in need of a stronger restriction than discarding 2 cards from your hand as the cost. It was later reprinted as Junk Arm, which looks like an exact reprint, but it's technically not. At the time Junk Arm was printed, trainer cards were split into supporters, stadiums, and trainers. You could not retrieve a supporter card like Professor Oak's New Theory with Junk Arm, since that card does not say trainer anywhere on the card. However, later in the Black and White era, trainer became the overarching category of which supporters, items, and stadiums fell into, so the Dowsing Machine card, which had the same wording, would allow you to get any trainer card, just like the original Item Finder. However, it was an Ace spec like Computer Search, so it is limited to 1 per deck, and the only competitive format it is allowed in is the expanded format. Rocket's Sneak Attack and the Rocket's Trap are both on my Power 9 list because they made the game borderline unplayable if a player was able to successfully complete the handlock with them. Using Imposter Oak's Revenge, you would force your opponent into a new hand of 4 cards. Then use Rocket's Sneak Attack to shuffle a trainer card from your opponent's hand into their deck. Then use the Rocket's Trap to shuffle their remaining 3 cards into their deck. This was on a coin flip, so if you flipped tails, you just draw through your deck to get more Rocket's Traps, or recycle them with an Item Finder. The goal was to leave your opponent with a 0-card hand, and then run through their board with a solid attacker like Wigglytuff. Safe to say that players hated this strategy, and it made the game toxic and uneventful. Energy Removal and Super Energy Removal are the final 2 cards on my Power 9 for the Pokemon trading card game. Energy Removal discards an opponent's energy for no additional cost other than simply playing the card, and Super Energy Removal removes 2 energies for the price of discarding an energy on one of your own Pokemon. These cards were staples in many decks, and it felt unfair to play against a deck using 4 energy removal if your deck had none. Energy removal has been reimagined into Crushing Hammer, which has the same effect but on a coin flip. Crushing Hammer was a staple in some formats, but imagine how toxic it would have been if it did not require a coin flip. Let's recap. My Power 9 for the classic era of the Pokemon trading card game is Sneasel, Professor Oak, Gust of Wind, Computer Search, Item Finder, Rocket Sneak Attack, the Rocket's Trap, Energy Removal, and Super Energy Removal. I would be utterly shocked if any of these cards were introduced into the modern Pokemon card game unchanged from their original printings, and they were all powerful and iconic cards in their own time. Please let me know what cards you would have included in the Pokemon TCG Power 9, and if you would like to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.